Delegation, Mr. Mário David. The floor is yours for 2 minutes, please.
Thank you, Madam President. Good afternoon, colleagues. Good afternoon, Mr. Nour. It's nice talking to you. I would like to have one kind of practical question and then one more political one. The practical question is that I fully understand when you ask for a longer time in order to prepare the different parties and so on for the elections that hopefully we will see. But I wanted to, something that I haven't heard yet about was the fact, how can we trust the registration books? How can we trust the electoral roll that exists nowadays? I mean, is that any new census of the voters that are going to participate on these elections? And also, what is your position regarding the participation or the presence of international observers in these elections to come? And the second thing is that I've seen a depeche from Reuters in the mid-February referring to an interview that you apparently had given to a Lebanese television, Al Jadid, in which you advocate the renegotiation of the peace treaty with Israel. Can you please specify exactly what you mean by this? Because we have understood by the military, from the military leaders, that the peace treaty with Israel would remain into force. And I would like to know what do you think about, what exactly did you have in mind when you mentioned this? What is your position regarding the Arab League Peace Initiative? And it was also mentioned, apparently, that in your interview you said that such a treaty with Israel, once renegotiated, should go to a referendum. And what would be your position in such a referendum? Thank you very much.
يعني الحقيقة أنا عندي 13 سؤال المفروض أن أنا أجيب عليهم في.
I've been asked 13 questions and I've been given 5 minutes to answer them. That's about 30 seconds a question, so it's difficult. I'll try to be concise because there are some commonalities between questions. What do we expect of the European Union? A number of questions were put on that. And on what we think about Camp David. Those are questions we often hear. Well, what you've said about me is not true. Those are things that were published in Israeli newspapers. In fact, I've said the opposite at times. I have said that Egypt will continue to comply with its international commitments and with those agreements. Camp David is an agreement. It was entered into 30 years ago. And of course, among the provisions of that agreement is to allow for geopolitical change and demographic change. There are also provisions in the agreement which foresee the kind of change that we've just been through. We believe in a just peace, and we believe that this civilian and democratic seizure of power that has just taken place in Egypt will take us down the path of modernity, and that means that we will respect our international commitments. So much for Camp David. Now, the electoral law. We don't think the current electoral law is appropriate. This is a very relevant point. We're going to have a national committee to take charge of elections. We're going to have a new electoral law. We have 6 million Egyptians who have no right to vote at the moment, and we also have a military law which requires that any candidate must be of Egyptian nationality and must always have been of only Egyptian nationality. So these are restrictions that we need to change in the future. We have a Nobel Prize winner, Mr. El-Baradei, who is unfortunately has another nationality besides Egyptian, so he can't be a candidate. As far as my own political party, we were set up 89 days we'd only been in existence for 89 days when I announced I wanted to be a candidate, but we were caught short. You know, we have to wonder about that. Now, for the transitional period, 18 months, yes, I think that's what we need if we are to give experience to the new parties in particular. The current government has no legitimacy whatsoever. It was set up by Mubarak, and he's no longer on the political scene in Egypt. It's a transitional government, but we would prefer a government of technocrats. I don't think it's a good idea to organise presidential elections under this transitional government. We would certainly refuse to take part in any elections in the present situation. On the Constitution, yes, it has to be thoroughly overhauled. We need a constituent assembly to draft a new constitution to cover presidential and parliamentary elections, and we've got to refine our existing constitutional concepts and update our constitution.